Gerasimov's position is more precarious than ever. The Kremlin has given him an ultimatum. Either Pokrovsk falls by mid-November or its resignation. But Putin's plan is once again falling apart at the seams. Russian troops are not advancing. The Russian leadership has already agreed on a replacement. The dictator has decided to act decisively. The military command is falling apart before our eyes. Putin is surrounded by rats. What a twist for the rats. Could it be that tomorrow there will be no one left to lead the dictator's army? This and more in the following report. On.
The last leg of Valery Gerasimov's chair has broken. The movement Atej, citing information from officers of one of the Russian military groups, reports that the Kremlin is very dissatisfied with the general's work and, to put it mildly, his untruthful reports from the front.
Putin has given Gerasimov a deadline to capture Pokrovsk by mid-November. This order is the general's last chance to keep his position. Against the backdrop of this ultimatum, there has been a sharp intensification in the Pokrovsk direction. The command is currently sending increasingly large and overwhelming waves of its own personnel, forcing them into what are essentially suicidal attacks. This tactic, while tragic and costly, is ultimately unremarkable given the circumstances.
Without charisma. Valery Gerasimov is the man to whom Putin owes his first presidential term. It was he, while preparations were underway in Moscow, who was checking off boxes on the ballots, who commanded the combat operations for the village of Komsomolskoye. This battle, which lasted 15 days, became the key and final one in the Russian Second Chechen campaign. Gerasimov delivered victory to candidate Putin, marching over the countless corpses of Russian army soldiers and local residents.
The residents were allowed to leave the village, but they weren't allowed to go far from their homes or the immediate area. Strict rules were put in place, and they were only permitted to move within a limited distance, always under supervision. For several days, they were forced to remain behind these boundaries, unable to visit other towns or see people outside the restricted zone. Yes, this all happened in the year 2012.
It was Gerasimov who presented the hybrid warfare formula to the Ukrainian leadership. At that time, he insisted that it was necessary to move away from classical wars towards destabilization on the ground.
It consists in the active use of the protest potential of the fifth column.
A little later, the Gerasimov formula was first tested by the Russians in Crimea, and then, according to Bellingcat investigators, in 2014, Valery Gerasimov was the initiator of sending regular Russian troops to Ukraine's Ilovaisk and of transferring Russian military equipment to the separatists, from which, incidentally, the Malaysian Boeing was shot down. Mute Gerasim, as this grey cardinal of the general staff is called among themselves, has outlasted all his flamboyant and loud critics.
Those heartless individuals who refuse to provide us with the ammunition we desperately need will, without a doubt, burn in hell. We're running short on ammunition, about 70% remaining. Shoigu, Gerasimov, where are you?
Where's the ammunition? Prigozhin was blown up. Strelkov Gherkin is rotting behind bars. After the scandal, it was thanks to the efforts of Valery Gerasimov that the favorite of Russian Z-patriots, General Popov, was also sent there. Even Shoigu was carried out of the Ministry of Defense, but Gerasim remains, and he still sits in his chair. Although rumors about his dismissal have been actively circulating since last summer, and now supposedly they really have some basis. If Gerasimov fails to capture Pokrovsk, he will be replaced. By mid-November, a certain Viktor Viktorovich Poznikir, who was born and raised near the Ukrainian city of Sumy, will take his place. Not much is known about him. He was secretly awarded the Order of Zhukov, and in February 2024 he received the rank of Colonel General.
It's hard to call this military commander a media figure. His name first appeared in the media after the start of the operation in Syria. The Lieutenant General held the position of First Deputy Chief of the main operational directorate of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces. His briefings were dedicated to the situation around Palmyra and Aleppo. Poznikir also spoke about the work of the Russian military police in the Middle East and criticized the presence of American military forces in the region. The Lieutenant General's statement about the U.S. plans to develop a global missile defense system caused even greater resonance. At the Moscow Conference on International Security, Poznikir called Washington a likely adversary of Moscow. To overcome missile defense, Viktor Viktorovich proposed using the Sarmat and Avangard systems.
It is still unknown whether Gerasimov will be able to do so, to once again outsmart his adversaries and hold on. Since the summer, the occupiers have been amassing troops in the Pokrovsk direction and probing for weak spots in the Ukrainian defense. On their side are Russia's vast resources, which they spare no expense to achieve their goals, and a large number of gentlemen. lucky ones who were tempted by a contract and a new hero status. And in 2025, Pokrovsk could become an important and decisive battle, just like the Chechen village of Komsomolskoye once was.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
A new front is urgently heating up in the north. Finland is mobilizing 15,000 troops. Large-scale exercises are taking place right next to the Russian border. The Kremlin is already holding its head in its hands. Panic is spreading faster than the news. The Russian authorities are forming people's militias because they're afraid even of the shadow of Finnish soldiers. The situation is escalating like never before. Putin's confidence in his own greatness is vanishing rapidly. Has the turning point really come? More on this, without embellishment, in the report. Coming up. Acting proactively. Finland is deploying 15,000 troops to the border with Russia. The Finns are preparing for the largest series of military exercises this year. Conscripts, reservists, professional soldiers, as well as units from allied countries Sweden and the United Kingdom will take part. According to the country's land forces, the goal of the maneuvers is to test the army's readiness to defend the state and to strengthen cooperation with NATO allies.
An aggressive act by the occupying country. On the territory of the occupying country, in direct proximity to the borders of Finland, there is currently intensive engineering construction of new military bases, the army of the occupying country. We are talking about Petrozavodsk, Kandalaksha, and other settlements on the territory of the Russian Federation which indicate the redeployment of units of the Russian army. One of the
largest episodes will be the Lively Sentry exercise, which will take place in southern Finland from November 27th to December 4th. Almost.
7,000, which is the number 7,000, that is 7 followed by 3 zeros. Participants will be actively involved. With this, accordingly, the so-called neutral status. That is to say that after the occupation of Finnish lands, friendly and good neighborly relations were established has absolutely no basis. Russian military presence near the borders of Finland, it kept increasing.
In the spring of 2023, Finland became a member of the North Atlantic Alliance. This provoked a sharp reaction from Russia, worsening bilateral relations. In addition, Finland imposed sanctions against Russia and refused to grant asylum to Russians fleeing mobilization. After that, Putin's lackeys began blaming the Finns for every sin at every opportunity. For example, in September, former ALCO president Dmitry Medvedev decided that Finland was preparing to attack Russia.
After joining NATO under the guise of defensive measures, Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia, apparently setting up a staging ground to attack us.
Moreover, according to his version, Russia supposedly by law deserves reparations from the Finns for World War II. He claims that back then, they paid too little thanks to the goodwill. This concerns the island of Gotland, and accordingly in relation to Poland. Following the alcoholic Medvedev, the head of the State Duma Defense Committee, Andrei Kartapolov, also made aggressive statements. He stated, or rather threatened, that Russia is ready to defend itself at any moment. They have everything they need for that. Medvedev had previously spoken about this as well.
We simply cannot ignore the fact that Finland is currently a member of the North Atlantic Alliance, also known as NATO. This requires us to change our military approaches, arranging the border and repelling possible unfriendly acts.
The political and military leaders of Finland are doing everything they can to emphasize that an attack by Russia would be an act of suicidal madness.
The Russian Federation is demonstrating its readiness for a direct confrontation with the NATO bloc, and accordingly the first country that will be in the focus of attention of the occupying armies will be Finland and the Baltic states. Therefore the risks are high. This is also evidenced by the formation of new military units in the Leningrad military district and accordingly the deployment of military infrastructure directly near the borders with Finland.
Earlier, it was reported that Finland had offered NATO to establish a new military base on its territory, Helsinki, which could become a base for large NATO reconnaissance drones. And that's not all on this topic. This was me, Darina Hatsakalo. Even more scorching news in our next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you!